A ghostly night of pomp and scandal. Sir Winston hosts Samuel Pepys in Westminster. In the fog-shrouded afterlife, where the living dare not go after the stroke of midnight, the grand and haunted halls of Westminster played host to one of the most bizarre ghostly gatherings ever seen. This narrative is sponsored by Polly Speaks For You. The creator of Polly Speaks For You has always been passionate about empowering individuals, especially those with disabilities or learning challenges, through text-to-speech and voice recognition technology. Polly Speaks For You isn't just a tool. It's a bridge for people to communicate and interact with the world in a meaningful way. By blending historical storytelling with cutting-edge tech, the creator showcases how powerful a voice can be, whether telling your own story or preserving history. So hit that like, share, and subscribe button and help this channel grow. Now back to the story. Sir Winston Churchill, with a cigar perched jauntily in his mouth and a glass of whiskey in hand, was the master of ceremonies for the night's shenanigans. But this wasn't just any gathering of specters. Tonight, the spirits of Britain's greatest and most scandalous had gathered to meet the notorious Samuel Pepys. And Pepys, in full pomp and with not one, but two wives clinging to each arm, was about to get the surprise of his afterlife. "Pepys, you old scoundrel," Sir Winston boomed as Pepys swaggered into the grand hall, his ridiculous periwig practically glowing in the ethereal light. Come in. We've all been waiting for you. Even the Queen herself has been dying. Well, figuratively speaking, to ask you a thing or two." At the far end of the hall sat Elizabeth I, her sharp eyes glinting with mischief as she twirled a golden scepter, casting a skeptical glance at the puffed-up Pepys. "Samuel," she began in her regal tone, "I read your diary, and let's just say I've seen less drama at court. What were you thinking?" Pepys, blushing despite being a ghost, puffed out his chest and opened his diary, ever the bureaucrat ready to defend his historical record. "Your Majesty, I was merely documenting the times. The plague, the Great Fire." Elizabeth raised a hand, silencing him with a flick of a wrist. Yes, we all know about the plague and the fire, but tell me, did you really think no one would read about your other activities? The maids, the wine, the indiscretions?" The room erupted into laughter, ghostly monarchs and statesmen howling as Pepys squirmed under the scrutiny of the greats. From a shadowy corner, Henry VIII, his ghostly bulk nearly tipping over a table laden with spectral food, guffawed so loudly that the walls shook. "A man after my own heart," he bellowed, raising a tankard in toast. "Too bad you didn't write about me more often, Pepys. I could have given you material for volumes." Pepys' wives, perched on either side of him, gave him sidelong glares that could pierce even the thickest fog of death. One of them, a stout woman with a no-nonsense expression, jabbed him sharply in the ribs. "So, Samuel, care to tell us why we weren't mentioned more in your little diary? Or should I say romantic escapades?" The other wife chimed in with a sarcastic grin. "Oh yes, my dear. We certainly weren't important enough to compete with your historical events, were we?" Pepys, looking as if he'd rather melt into the floor, stammered. "And my dear, the times were very, distracting. I was doing a great service to history." "Yes, distracting indeed," interjected Queen Victoria, who was fanning herself from a plush, spectral throne. "I've read your diary too, Pepys. And let me tell you, for a man who spent so much time documenting other people's misdeeds, you had quite the busy, personal schedule. Disgraceful. And here I thought Albert was my greatest distraction." The hall filled with laughter once again, as ghostly goblets clinked and the misty shapes of long-dead lords and ladies swirled in their chairs. Even Charles II, lounging lazily on an enormous spectral cushion, joined in the fun. "Oh, Pepys," Charles said between fits of laughter, "I remember your diary well, though I'm sure you downplayed a few of our livelier nights." Pepys turned an even deeper shade of ghostly white, realizing there was no escaping the scrutiny of a room full of monarchs, each more judgmental than the last. Sir Winston, wiping away tears of laughter, stepped in to save poor Pepys from further embarrassment. "Come now, let's not roast Samuel too much," he chuckled. "After all, he gave us a jolly good read. Though I will admit, Samuel, your personal life could have been a bit less public." The room quieted as the heavy doors at the back creaked open, revealing two new arrivals who instantly stole the attention of the crowd. Floating gracefully into the hall were none other than the ghostly figures of Prince Philip and Queen Elizabeth II, arm in arm and smiling with the kind of knowing mischief that only centuries of royal gossip could provide. Philip, always one for a joke, raised an eyebrow at Pepys. "Ah, Samuel, I hear you're the man who wrote down everything. If I had a penny for every time I wish someone had done that for my jokes." Queen Elizabeth II, ever composed, added with a twinkle in her eye, "I dare say you wouldn't have found me in such compromising situations. One must maintain dignity, even in diaries." She shot a playful look at Pepys, who was by now visibly sweating, an impressive feat for a ghost. "Well, Your Majesty," Pepys stammered, "I was merely providing an honest account." "Dignity?" Henry VIII interrupted again, roaring with laughter. "Come now, Elizabeth. If we had all been as dignified as you, Pepys would have had nothing to write about." The room exploded into ghostly laughter again, and even Pepys couldn't help but crack a sheepish grin. After all, who could argue with the monarch who had chopped off two wise heads? "Enough, enough," Sir Winston called out, grinning from ear to ear. "Tonight is about fun, not digging up old skeletons." Well, except for Pepys' love life, of course. The crowd hooted with laughter once more as Sir Winston gestured for Pepys to take a seat at the grand table. "Come sit down, Samuel. Join us for a drink. I'm sure you'll have more stories to add after tonight's debauchery." Pepys, still holding on to his diary, as if it might protect him from further humiliation, sat gingerly at the table between his two wives. Across from him, the ghostly monarchs raised their glasses in unison, each toasting to the scandals, intrigues, and hilarities of history. As the night wore on, the banter grew even more outrageous. Henry VIII tried, unsuccessfully, to arm wrestle Queen Victoria, who won, much to his chagrin. Charles II led a ridiculous dance-off with King George V, which resulted in Charles falling through a chair in a fit of laughter. Even Elizabeth I, normally so composed, cracked a joke or two at Pepys' expense, much to the delight of the assembled ghosts. But the highlight of the night came when Prince Philip decided to share some of his own diary-worthy moments, much to Queen Elizabeth II's mock dismay. "I was always much better at keeping things private," Philip said with a grin. "But if you all want a good laugh, there was that time." The room was soon filled with raucous laughter, ghostly monarchs in stitches as the stories became more and more absurd. Pepys, now fully immersed in the revelry, found himself laughing too, finally able to enjoy the absurdity of his own afterlife. As the party continued into the early hours of the ghostly morning, Sir Winston raised his glass once more. "To Samuel Pepys," he declared, "the man who gave us more scandal and laughter than we could ever have imagined. And may his diary always remind us that history, for all its seriousness, is sometimes best remembered for its hilarity." And with that, the haunted halls of Westminster rang with laughter, echoing through the centuries as the ghosts of Britain's past continued their uproarious celebration, a night that would undoubtedly make its way into Pepys' next unwritten chapter. If you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. To learn more about South Africa's leading accessibility software, visit www.polispeaks4u.co.za and support this meaningful dyslexic initiative. Thank you for watching.